Before I get started, I just want to make sure you're all aware that IGLTA, if you're not a member, we do host a convention, a global annual convention every year. This year we are in Atlanta from September 8th through 11th. And we hope everyone here on the call has the opportunity to join. We'll see what travel restrictions allow us to do in terms of traveling overseas if you're US based versus abroad. So we're crossing our fingers. I did put a quick link in the chat, which is iglta.org/Atlanta Convention. We are actually offering a giveaway. So we are going to pick one winner who's going to get one free convention registration and a $500 flight credit. So you can sign up at that link, and if you're lucky, you might be the winner of that. So yeah, just before I get into the session, I'll quickly introduce the four panelists that we have here. But I did want to just mention that I've kind of thought about Pride marketing, what's kind of happened over the past few years. And, I would definitely say it in my experience, 10 years ago, we did not see sort of the business world get behind this Pride movement, where we see people on social media and businesses and corporations change their logos for, Pride season. And, I would personally say from a progress standpoint, I think that's really, really great. I'm really excited that, so much of the business community is embracing the LGBT community. But on the other side, the coin, the other hand, I really struggle with, businesses sometimes thinking, well, Pride is the only LGBT activation. And of course, coming from the travel side of the business, we know that people travel, all around the world, at least pre-pandemic. And, like I said earlier, IGLTA in particular, and a lot of you folks come from the community, we're LGBT 365 days a year. So we want to equip you here with some of the latest marketing strategies to make sure that you're thinking LGBT community, how do you reach that community all year round? Not to say that Pride season is a bad activation, but just to make sure that, we're not forgotten the other 11 months of the year. So it's my pleasure to welcome our four panelists. Today we have Janey Tate, who is the sponsorship coordinator, Queendom Atlanta and Sweet Heat Miami. We have Oriol Pamies, who's the founder and CEO of Queer Destinations and is also an IGLTA board member. We were going to have Diane Enerson-Minshall, who's the CEO of Pride Media, but unfortunately she was sick last minute. So luckily we have someone from her team, Jamie Tredwell, who's the managing director of brand partnerships, who is going to fill in for Diane and represent Pride Media. And last but not least, we have Dustin, if I pronounce it right, Woehrmann, the CEO and creative director of Communify. So just before we get into the discussion, I'm going to give each of the panelists about a 1-minute introduction so they can just quickly tell you who they are and just a real quick background about themselves. So Janey, do you want to go first and just let the group here know a little bit about you?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Austin. My name is Janey Tate. I'm from Miami, Florida. I joined the Two Fly Entertainment team in 2019. The founder of our company who does the event Sweet Heat Miami and Queendom in Atlanta is DJ Dimples. She's been hosting these events for over 14 years. And I met her and loved what she was doing and decided to help her go after some corporate sponsorships and just sponsorships in general. It was just amazing that she was doing this event for so long, bringing over 10,000 women, from across the country and even the world, and she hadn't had a corporate sponsor. So she has a mainly Black and Latinx event for women, and it's a dope event. Our event is September 7th. It's Labor Day weekend. We have a week of events in Atlanta. It's called Queendom. I'll put the information in the chat, but this is what we do, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Janey. And actually, yeah, the Queendom Atlanta event is well, they're actually an event partner of IGLTA, and it's happening right before our convention. So you can come out to our convention and maybe check out the event. So Oriol, do you want to give a quick background intro?
Yes, thank you. I'm originally from Spain, and for years, my goal has been finding the intersection in all my projects between activism and business. That led me to create Queer Destinations. Since 2019, we're leading the LGBTQ+ strategy for Mexico nationwide. We represent the main destinations in Mexico and already expanding to Spain, Costa Rica, and Colombia this year. So looking forward to work in innovative marketing strategies with private sector, destinations, and government.
Awesome. Thank you, Oriol. And I'm going to turn it over to Jamie with the quick intro.
Hey everyone, my name's Jamie Tredwell. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the managing director of brand partnerships at Pride Media. I've been with our team for almost 6 years now and have really seen sort of the industry and the landscape of how brands and partners are reaching LGBTQ consumers and audiences really change over time in that kind of short span. So really looking forward to speaking with everyone today. Really quickly, if you don't know Pride Media, we have 5 brands that are basically like publishing sites that each speak to the LGBTQ consumer slightly differently. So we have Out, The Advocate, Pride.com, Out Traveler, and Plus.
Great, thanks, Jamie. And last but not least, Dustin, a quick intro for the group here.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Austin, thanks for having me. I recently just got back from Los Cabos, so I finally dusted off my passport. Very excited about that. Excited to see everybody at the conference coming up. My name is Dustin Woehrmann. My company is Communify. We're based in New Orleans, and we are a creative and content agency. We've worked in the LGBTQ space for the entire, my whole career, which started in LA about 21 years ago. And currently we're doing a lot of work with destinations and hospitality industry, helping to connect them to their local communities. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but thanks for having me.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into the panel. And since Dustin, you kind of ended, maybe I'll just start and ask you a question. So one of the things that we wanted to talk a little bit about was to see if any of the panelists, and I'll let you answer this, Dustin, is if you can give an example of any LGBT marketing campaigns or initiatives that you've recently seen that you actually think were effective, and maybe just tell us what the campaign was and why, because later we'll maybe talk about some that weren't so effective. So I don't know if you have something in mind.
Sure, I do. I think the thing that sort of caught me the most in this past year is the MasterCard True Name campaign. I think more than it being a campaign, it actually went to address an issue that our community is facing. And I think there's a line in the video that is something about it's not about a card, it's about keeping us safe. And I feel like it just really tied into where we are right now, and it had such a bigger impact for me than just someone putting a rainbow on their logo or something like that. So that was a really successful campaign that I thought this year.
That's really cool. That's an awesome example. I don't know, do any of the other panelists have one that they want to throw out as an example?
I loved that one too, Dustin. I thought it was really great, and the product does really speak to a need of the queer and trans community. So I definitely agree that was a great example. For me, in the travel space, one of the ones I've been loving recently is the Orbit's Travel As You Are campaign. Not sure if people have seen that recently, but they hired, I think, a queer photographer and videographer to just capture LGBTQ people in these really gorgeous destinations. And one of the things about their creative is it just really captures, I think, a sense of freedom that all of us sort of in this moment after being in quarantine for so long are really seeking in terms of what we want to get out of a travel experience. And so I totally think that one just really hit the nail on the head in terms of both representation and sort of where we are at this time and what I want to see when I travel.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, Jamie. Actually, I think the Orbits did a really, really awesome job in their campaign. So if you haven't seen it yet, definitely do a Google search and watch the video. It's really well done. So I'm going to do kind of the opposite question, and maybe I'll throw this to you, Oriol. Can you think of any examples of marketing campaigns or initiatives that you've seen that maybe didn't go well, and what was wrong with them? What did they miss? And what tips would you give the audience here to kind of adjust?
So I think that most marketing campaigns directed to the LGBTQ plus community that are not successful are because they're missing the mark on most companies that are now jumping on the trend on targeting LGBTQ plus segment are not relying on the experts. And we have some of the experts here in the panel, which could guide everyone towards the direction that show what is the language that should be used, what is the kind of representation that should be used. And I believe that the latest campaigns that I've seen is not that they're terrible, it's that they're missing the mark and they're like investing money on strategy that is obsolete and that is not targeting what the new generations are looking at. And I think that basically right now, and coming back to one example that I always use on positive things, there's this campaign from Sprite in Argentina that they launched in 2019 that implements it says, "You're not alone" in Spanish, but they're using the X with inclusive language. And within, they're not only targeting LGBT people, they're targeting families or allies of LGBT plus people. So I do think that the key here to take into consideration intersectionality, and that when you're doing something that is LGBTQ plus, you need to understand that there's more than cisgender gay white men, and then there's a lot of opportunity on creating products and therefore imagery and messaging that talks not only to the queer community but also all allies who would buy a product just because you're on the right side of history and you're presenting it properly. So I'm not the one that points fingers and exposes, but I do see that it's a pity that the companies are like investing money on the wrong direction. But now there's so many efforts out there that could help things on the right way.
Yeah, that's a really great example and good advice. And yeah, I think it's really important to point out that, you know, when you do your LGBT marketing, just like Oriol mentioned, you know, don't forget that your campaign, you know, is likely to be seen by other people, you know, in the allied community. So, you know, I think it's easy to forget that when we're targeting LGBT, maybe if you think a little bit about your messaging and what you're trying to accomplish, you know, you can really kind of reach a secondary audience, you know, those people who are allies who see that you're doing the right thing for, you know, their brother who's gay or their sister who's a lesbian or their nephew or whatever. It's sort of a personal way to you know, reach someone that maybe wasn't your intended audience. So that's a really good tip. Okay, great. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, and Janey, I'm going to throw one your way because you guys do events, you know, year round. So the question is, you know, can you think of any general tips or ideas for businesses here or destinations on, you know, things, how they can market outside of Pride, you know, the other 11 months of the year? What are things that people can do to reach the, you know, the LGBT community?
I think the team does a really great job of making sure that they're engaged with the audience throughout the year through our social media pages. And DJ Dimples is really good about like posting past content, engaging the audience with contests, doing throwbacks to fun parties that we've done. And she also starts her marketing pretty early as well. So she'll do her early bird tickets. She'll do campaigns looking for models or volunteers. So I'm constantly seeing things on our social media pages, and that's what we use to engage our audience year round. So I think that really improving your social media marketing can help you with that. And that's the strategy that we use to engage our audience year round. And I see that it works. People are constantly on the page looking for content, looking to see how they can stay in touch with what we're doing. And also too, DJ Dimples uses her personal brand as a lesbian mixer, and she's constantly engaging her audience there too. So she has dual things working there for her year round to reach and stay in touch with her audience.
That's really good advice. And yeah, social media, right? I think sometimes we forget that really, you know, social media is really just sort of a digital way to have conversations, right? So it just kind of helps maintain the conversation all year round. You know, even if your campaigns or you're doing something, you know, more time-based, or, you know, only a few events, I would agree. It's a really great way to kind of continue that communication with the audience outside of the time of your campaign.
Hey, Austin. So one other thing that I've noticed, like Utah's Pride Center, they're only offering year-round sponsorships now that are as someone who comes on for a sponsor, they're not coming on just to sponsor that one event in June. They're a sponsor throughout the whole year, and they're tying them into everything that the Pride Center is doing throughout the year. So I think that's another sort of trend or thing that we're going to start seeing more of.
That's a great idea, and yeah, really kind of encouraging the corporate world to think the 11 months of the year, right? You know, we love all the attention in June, but it's like, man, post-Pride depression in July hit us in, and it's like, you know, where are all the Pride flags? Nobody's talking to me anymore.
Well, there's so many other moments that are so big for our community. I mean, we have LGBT History Month in October, National Coming Out Day in October. So much of our community is intersectional by nature. So even celebrating like Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Awareness Month is really important too. So I think part of it is realizing that the LGBTQ community identifies as so much more than just being LGBTQ. And once you sort of break that down, you really start to unveil these different layers of who we are and how brands and partners are able to really reach this audience and engage with us in ways that aren't just about, you know, waving a flag and celebrating Pride.
Yeah, that's good advice. And, you know, going back to Janey's comment on social media, you know, my kind of main job with IGLTA is you know, trying to create conversation for our consumer audience about travel and LGBT tourism and our members specifically. And I think it's good advice to, you know, to look at the different things that happen throughout the year that are LGBT specific, or like Jamie said, that are intersectional. And, you know, that really kind of gives you, I don't want to use the word excuse, but it gives you a topic, or it gives you a reason to talk to your audience, right? You know, because if it's Black History Month, or it's, you know, whatever event, if it's, you know, Trans Awareness Week, or, you know, it gives you an opportunity to engage with your audience in sort of a more authentic way. So that's really good advice. I had a pin in this question for you, Dustin. I know that you've worked with some of your clients on creating advisory groups. So I think, you know, what's some of the people on the call might not particularly be part of the LGBT community, and you know, a lot of destinations might not necessarily know the right things to do to set up a strategy. So would you want to explain to us a little bit about how, you know, an advisory group could potentially help business or destination set up their marketing strategy?
Yeah, sure. So the problem that I found for a lot of cities that we work with and businesses is that they have really interesting communities. There's a lot going on in the LGBTQ world in these smaller destinations that could attract visitors. The DMOs don't really understand how to tap into it or how to start that communication, or they might be talking to just like one person from one organization, which doesn't really tell, you know, the full picture of what's going on in that city. And the DMOs are also always looking for really great content. So if we can find ways to connect those dots, it's helping everyone, right? It's giving good content for the destination. It's you know, potentially bringing more people, which in turn is going to help all these organizations. So in the cities that we work with, we've started to create these advisory groups that bring all the voices to the table. They could include things like Pride organizers, event producers, you know, local smaller organizations. And then like one of the biggest things is don't forget all the allies. Like some of the biggest help that we've had in these groups is from hoteliers or breweries, or, you know, different groups that you know, different allies that are really helping us with these initiatives. And basically what's been happening is we've been meeting quarterly, and you know, we have an agenda that's specific to what can this group do, what types of initiatives. Our work in New Orleans, the group has done everything from led training sessions to helping us organize our float at World Pride. So it's a pretty broad mix of like how these groups can get involved. But yeah, it's I think it's just a really great way. And for the small businesses here, I think for you to be involved in a group like that, talk to your DMO, talk to your tourism group, and encourage them to start some sort of a group like this that you could participate in, because I think the more groups like this that start to pop up, it really is helping everyone across the board.
Yeah, that's really wise advice. And then I would say if you're from a destination and you're on this call and you don't have an advisory group, well, it's a really good motivation to start one, right? All right, I'm going to switch gears here and throw a question your way, Oriol. So I know you come from, your business does LGBT hospitality training and education. So my question to you, and hopefully this helps the group, is what would be the value to a business or a destination, whether it's a hotel or a CVB, a DMO, and actually educating themselves on the best practices for being LGBT welcoming? Like where's the value? What can they accomplish in doing that?
For us, it's not even about the value, it's a requirement. We don't start working on a destination if they're not truly ready for it, because they backfire really quickly. So if we start only, let's say, working for a destination and we start launching amazing marketing campaigns and we start bringing in, but then after a month, we have, like, unfortunately, a situation where there's a discrimination case and we don't have a plan for it and we didn't prepare for it upfront, like the whole people around it will talk about the destination being a non-friendly place. And that, in order to correct that and address that, the main part of our work, it's always starting with sensitivity training. The first training we do when we work with a destination is a DMO. All the stuff from the director to the person that pays the invoices, everyone needs to know what are we doing and that we are aligned and that they understand the importance. And then we start breaking it down. In Mexico, for the first time, we have the same strategy nationwide. The same strategy is followed in the States or the DMOs, and the private sector is following the same path. And that makes it really easy, because at the end of the day, starting from the airplane that is coming, the transportation company that's bringing you to the hotel, the group of hotels that are welcoming you, the tours that you're experiencing from A to C, you're only experiencing a vacation throughout 100% of employees that have been trained and have this sensitivity. So I think that this is pushing forward I think that to a lot of competitors, how are you truly doing this in an intersectional way? We're not like trying to work on ghettos or only stay on hotels that are 100% gay. No, we want to stay in any hotel. We want to do any tour. We want to do the same that any other tourist would do, but we want to do it on a safe manner. And that is something that has to be pushed from the DMO perspective, and has to, when you were asking, what could like small business do, is exactly just like we were saying here. Dustin said, reach out to the DMOs and say, hey, I want to be part of the LGBTQ plus product. How can I be a part of it? And then we would be directing you towards to any LGBT person that wants to come. Because unfortunately, even in the countries where there are laws, and we're seeing this recently, a wave of LGBTQ plus phobia and attacks, we're seeing this happening. So even on those places where there are rights, the rights are changing the constitution, but they're not changing people's minds. And we need to have everything in our power to be able to provide that experience. So yes, marketing is very important, but always based on making sure that what we're selling has been like truly prepared and is genuine.
Yeah, I think you said it. That's a great takeaway. I mean, that, whether you're a small business or the largest corporation, make sure you're authentic and you're actually, walking your walk, before you before you talk the talk, right? Before you're marketing, you're doing the right thing for the community and actually being welcoming from A to Z. So that's great advice. All right, I have one more for you, Janey. So I'm gonna ask, can you provide some insight into the group and how businesses, talking about being authentic, how can businesses and organizations, destinations be really truly authentic when particularly trying to reach out to women and particularly women of color? What would you tell us here?
I think aligning with people who are leaders in the community is a good way to start. Also, I think attending our events, making sure that you come and see what it's about. Like Sweet Heat Miami is a really dope event that happens in Miami in May. And just to, kind of go back a little bit on what Oriol was saying about DMOs, Miami has a really great GMCVB. I see Dan Rios on the call, and they have an LGBT plus department that works with us. They were our first corporate sponsors, one of our first corporate sponsors, along with IGLTA. And I commend you guys on being interested in what DJ Dimples was creating and wanting to come and wanting to be a part and to reach that audience. What I've noticed is she's just kind of sometimes out there by herself and just in her world with the women and there, but it's like people know what she's doing, but no one really came in to see and say, hey, let's join in, let's work with her, let's see what they're doing. And I think if people just really kind of like step outside their comfort zones, if you see something that's happening within the lesbian community, just go to an event. I think that's a good place to start as well. Like just go check it out and see what's going on and see, what they have happening. And like I said, connecting with a leader, someone who understands the community, who could be a bridge for you, so you could understand the culture and the needs and the wants of that community could be a good way as well. I think it's simple as a DM on social media or email can start that conversation or that connection for you as well. A lot of times people just never reach out or never even try to, any form of communication. So I think just doing those simple things can get that conversation started with the women community.
That's really good advice. Yeah, thanks for that. Well, I guess I'll ask a similar question to, I was gonna say Diane, but Diane's on the call. My notes say Diane, but I'm gonna throw this to you, Jamie.
Yes, sure.
So talking about, we were talking about women and women of color, the lesbian community. So looking at, trying to be more diverse, like Oriol said, we want to avoid marketing only to cis white gay men, right? So how can businesses, how can destinations try to be more inclusive, particularly, reaching the trans community or trying to talk to people who are potentially non-binary? How can businesses be more inclusive? What advice would you give them?
I think with respect to like advertising, it starts with representation and really making sure that trans and non-binary people are part of your creative. One of the organizations that I think really excels at this is Greater Fort Lauderdale, and that's really thanks to Richard Gray and his team's work there. But they've really gone out of their way over the years, I think longer than most any people in this space have been kind of connecting with our market and prioritizing including trans and non-binary people in their creative. And the creative is not about those people being trans or however they identify. The creative is still about the destination and sort of the travel experience of being there. But the fact that they are including those people and that our community, I mean, it does send a very clear message that you are welcome here, and in Fort Lauderdale, we are celebrating you. So my biggest advice would just to be include and represent people in the trans and non-binary community, and you'll see a change over time of how they are sort of reacting to your message. The other thing I would say is, especially sort of going back.
Oops, looks like Jamie cut out there.
Sure that your message is authentic. I think hire and work with people and vendors who are in that community and who identify in that community. So if you want to reach or tell a story about like a trans person visiting your destination, hire a trans photographer or videographer to tell that story, because they'll be the ones to make it really the most authentic.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. That's good advice. And actually, I wanna dig in maybe a little bit deeper on that, because you mentioned something really quickly, which was, talking about creative. And when we say creative, that could be video, that could be photos, that could be whatever visual representation. And I guess I'll throw this question out to Jamie. You hit on it, but anyone else, either Dustin, Janey, or Oriol. Like, I know we get a lot of members asking us, how do we get the photos of the people? Maybe they've recognized that they want to be more inclusive and more diverse, but how do they do that? What's some tips that you could potentially give to them?
So I can answer this one. I think that within the last few years, every time we have more power in order to convincing companies and destinations to start doing LGBTQ plus marketing. Before, it was us trying to push and saying this is the right thing to do. Now there's enough studies that are showing the power of the community, and now everyone is jumping on. And the question is how, and are they doing it properly? And it doesn't cut it to call the LGBTQ plus person in your office. Because that's what happens, and it might sound like a joke, but it's what happens a lot of the times. And being LGBTQ plus does not make you automatically an expert. So I do think that the most important thing here is relying on agencies that are working this for a long time, creating focus groups and making sure that representation is met. And when I explain this to straight people, I say, well, first of all, they need to understand the whole aspect of LGBTQ plus and what does it mean. And I always explain that there's stadiums of people, and I use like sport references for them to like make it clear. There's stadiums of people full of individuals that are identifying with each letter. If they're not represented in your campaign, these people are they're not going to come to your destination or to your business. So I do think that starting from there, there's the obligation to make sure that we're putting trans and non-binary folks on the most important part of any strategy, because they lack of representation. Then we need to make sure that they understand that. And the other part, a lot of times they're scared. They're plain telling me, we are afraid that our regular clients are going to be afraid that now we turn into an LGBTQ plus hotel or an LGBTQ plus destination, and that our regular customers will run away. And here, to us, it's important that they understand that if big corporations that we see every time more and more represented in Pride are doing the efforts and they're going out of their way to do marketing campaigns, obviously, most of them care about us, but before that, they did their market studies to know that there's a lot more business into being diverse and inclusive than not mentioning that. So I do think that those are the two hooks that we are using to convince them. And then I think the champions will be the people like Dustin, Jamie, that are within the campaign. We're coming to out to do a campaign. We're having two heads. We are developing the campaign, but also telling you creative wise, make sure you're including this messaging, inclusive language. So I do think that it will take a while, but pushing forward, my advice would be make sure that you're doing the right steps with confidence by trusting agencies and experts, focus groups, whatever works for you, but that will give you the sense of confidence that what you're doing is right, that you're doing in the right time, that you're not off in terms of messaging, and making sure that you're intersectional, and that it's not a matter of only doing LGBTQ plus campaigns. I like to look at companies and destinations and look at anything that they're doing already, because a lot of times they're already doing efforts that with a small twist, they're sending the right message. So it doesn't mean that now we need to do an only LGBTQ plus campaign. To me, it's more important that we're intersectional. We're working with golf and LGBT. We're working with mice and LGBT. We're trying to look at implementing LGBTQ plus, not as only specific campaigns, which we love and we're doing, but also making sure that we're represented like across all their already like set budgets and strategies, making sure that we're also represented there.
Yeah, thanks, Oriol. I think that's a really well put and in-depth explanation. I would, the one thing I want to just quickly add, which I think is maybe helpful for small businesses. For small businesses, I 100% agree with everything Oriol says. Of course, as a small business, a lot of times you have a really small budget, right? So how do you do all those great things when you don't necessarily have the budget that a big destination or corporation would? And I'm going to give you a quick example. At IGLTA, we've made an effort over the years to try and make our imagery more inclusive. And we don't have the budget to do photo shoots, and we don't, we can't do, an awesome photo shoot like, Fort Lauderdale did with with the campaigns talking to the trans people. But what we've actually done is we've turned to social media, we've turned to Instagram, and we actually use a platform that's called CrowdRiff, which you do have to pay for, but really all CrowdRiff does is just makes your job easier. But essentially all we're doing is we're just going to Instagram and we find a really cool photo and we just ask them if we can use that, and we'll give them credit. And more often than not, people are happy to have their Instagram photos shared on your own platform, on your website, particularly if you have, a sizable audience. To that person, that, a lot of times that's a really cool thing for them, and they feel happy about that. So it's maybe a way to find imagery that's more inclusive that you might not necessarily otherwise have access to. And it's as simple as just asking. And if you have someone's permission to use a photo, then you're able to use it. And it's really that simple. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I'm going to quickly shift gears a little bit, and I guess I haven't heard you speak for a little bit, Janey, so I'm going to throw this one your way. I'm curious, in your opinion, like what would you say has changed in LGBT marketing over the past few years, or I don't know, the past 3, 5, 10 years? What trends have you seen that have changed?
I've seen more inclusion. I've seen more full spectrum of like the humanity of the LGBT plus community. It's not just a rainbow or just like, I think, like you said, a cis white man. I like the Etsy commercial from the holiday seasons last year where the two Black guys, they went back home for Christmas, and, one of the guys' dad gave the boyfriend a gift. And it was just, to me, it just showed also too, like, that people are people and that we love and we have relationships and we have family. And it wasn't so much like it's gay or lesbian or whatever. It's like, it was like they're people who have a family. And I think that the commercials now are like showing that. So if I see a commercial with couples, it's not just a man and a woman, it's two men. It could be a trans woman or trans man, or non-binary person. Like, it's not just one thing anymore. And I think it was before like a caricature of the gay experience that we saw a lot. And now I think that people are being respected and shown the full humanity of it. I do, still wish that there were more women of color in campaigns. I still think we have a ways to go there. I think a lot of times the default is to go men, but I think that it's been a long way from what we've seen in the past. And then also, too, just to backtrack, like you said about photos, I was going to say, chime in and say we're very open about that, especially if you're going to give us a repost or share, Queendom Atlanta or Sweet Heat Miami. If you contact us and say, hey, we want to repost or use your photos, we have really great photos of women just having a great time. And that's something that you want to include in your campaign. We're definitely open to that, and, doing partnerships. And I also wanted to say doing trade with events can be a way to, be able to share photos and content. If you're saying, hey, we'll promote your campaign, but we like, the content that you create, can we do a trade partnership? If you can't, afford a monetary sponsorship, or you can't afford your own photographer, that may be a way for you to get content as well for your campaigns.
That's really good advice. And I love the advice, particularly for small businesses or, businesses that don't maybe have the budget. Did I hear, I don't know if I heard anyone else on the panel that wanted to jump in on that, or?
I would say working with influencers. Influencers on COVID are terrible because they have no story to tell if they're quarantined, and they're eager to travel. So while we're recovering, one of the advice we're giving to everyone, but especially if someone does not have the resources to start shooting like a campaign from scratch, we have empty rooms. We have the possibility to provide the experience to someone that has the power and the voice to start explaining. And I think that this goes in a matter of understanding and saying, hey, we're going to provide you this experience, we're going to cover this, and not only sharing, are we going to be able to use that for marketing purposes afterwards? And a lot of them will tell you yes. Influencers are eager to start traveling again, to start experiencing again, to start having something to tell. So I do think that is also a great tip to making sure that you're maximizing opportunities and working with content creators that right now would be happy to engage with your company, your event, your destination, and then that could be something useful for you to now catch again the wave. And like on top of that, showing that all the protocols that we are all implementing with a lot of cost and effort are showing that you could probably get COVID easier if you stay in your city than if you're coming to a place that has been so well prepared. So I think that gives you the two sides. One is like creating content that you could probably use afterwards for promotion, but also trying to build that confidence back to travelers and showing that you're safe to travel again.
Those are really tips, yeah.
I think the last thing I would just add is like how we've seen the progression of how the rainbow has been used. I think like within this last year, when there was so many memes and social posts about companies and rainbow washing, and if that's the only thing that they're doing, I think it's almost like you shouldn't just don't do it. If you're not doing 10 times more than that, don't even do that one thing at this point. So I think that's like a huge progression that I've definitely seen over the last few years.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is advertise outside of Pride Month. Like have a conversation with LGBT people that goes beyond just June, and that'll really go a long way.
Yeah, I mean that's why we're all here today, right? I mean, beyond Pride, like don't forget us the other 11 months of the year, please. Those of us in the LGBT community on this call, we kind of know how that feels. Well, I'm going to do one more question, then I'm going to throw out to the group. So whoever wants to answer it, please feel free. And then a lot of you on the call today have submitted questions in advance. So I've organized some of those, and then I'm going to kind of throw those around and see who wants to answer those, because there's actually some really good questions. Actually, no, I take that back. This question that I'm going to throw out actually came from somebody on this call or who registered who maybe weren't able to attend. So I'm going to throw this out because I think it's actually a really good question. Pertains maybe more to destinations, but I think it's insightful. So the question is, how can a destination or maybe even a business do LGBT marketing or communication, particularly when they might be in a place where it might be seen as anti-gay, or maybe the legislation is maybe not LGBT friendly? Like I don't know if any of the panelists have an advice on how you can tread that water. I think it's a really good question.
Yeah, well, I could answer that. In terms of destinations, I think the work starts with sensitivity and training, and at least having a pool of companies in the private sector that will assure you that regardless what happens outside the doors of those properties, you're going to provide an amazing experience. And I do think that that's important, not only because by training those people, you're training uncles, fathers, friends from LGBTQ+ people that not only will provide a greater service to queer travelers, but also will become progressively members of the society that are having an impact by being more inclusive. And a lot of the times it's because they have never had the chance to interact with queer people, or they never had the chance to have a conversation about the life of LGBTQ+ people other than what they've seen on the media or what they discuss a Saturday night over drinks with friends. And that's something that I think that it's important. For us as queer travelers, we have to travel and show our support to places where queer communities have no rights. IGLTA has a strong position against boycotting because we would be facing our backs towards them. But I do think that we need to, make sure that it's not only marketing, that there's work that will assure us, that we have a safe experience, and that is a must. And as travelers, before investing, I think that we need to make sure that where we're going, there's only a way to do, which is sensitivity training, and making sure that those companies that we already trust will provide us that experience. There are cases like Israel, for instance, that they don't have a lot of specific rights like gay marriage, but they have become like an amazing hotspot for queer people, especially with Pride. But I do think that it's a progress, and by visiting and by implementing queer travel strategies, we're pushing forward the agenda, and we're making imperative that at some point those rights are passing. So I would say that definitely like something that has to be done with sensitivity, and making sure that you're not under the umbrella of pinkwashing. We're real aware of what destinations are doing that, and we need to hold them accountable, and on the other hand, prize those that they're doing it right. So I think that would be my take on this.
Yeah, thanks for that, Oriol. And I'm going to point out, you mentioned one thing. I heard the word trust, and I think that's a really good segue to this other question, which is, and actually I'm going to throw this maybe to Jamie from maybe your experience. What would you say, I mean, what can businesses, destinations, people on this call, what can they do to connect with LGBT travelers, but to really try and build trust, right? So beyond just running a marketing campaign, but how do you build that loyalty and trust with the community?
I would say representation is important. Again, I think just making sure that you're showing the community that, we exist and we celebrate you when you're in our destination is very important. I also think trust comes over time, and it's just like, again, if you just are having an LGBTQ message in June and then no other time of the year, I mean, we'll see through that, and we'll know that, like, okay, something's wrong here. I think another way to really build that authentic trust is to partner with organizations in your community that are doing the work for your local LGBTQ community. So is it an LGBTQ center? Is it, an organization that's like delivering meals to people who are in need? Like, what are the I guess, nonprofit organizations that are doing really good work that impacts the people in your community, that you can sort of find a way to tie in the message there and show that as a destination, we not only care about, people visiting our community, but we care about the actual LGBTQ community, making sure that they're thriving when they are here.
I think also, I mean, just to add to that a little bit more, trust is definitely built over time. Like, this can't be a 1-year campaign and you're finished and you've earned our respect. This needs to be a plan, a strategy that is multi-year, and something that you really are building on year upon year. That's really how trust comes.
I should have used Janey as an example too, with like Sweet Heat in Miami. I mean, that's an event that happens every year, and they've really built a strong community of people who are going every year and really looking forward to this event. And so, I mean, it's huge credit to you, but like, I think that's something that does build trust, and it does build something that people are looking forward to every year and wanting to come back, specifically because they see that we're represented here, we can find community here and be ourselves.
Thank you, Jamie. I would add on trust is saying that if you see something going on, I think coming when is not the party. When there is a serious issue that the community needs support in, I think a simple post of just saying we stand with XYZ or we support XYZ can go a long way in the community to show that it's trust. I think a lot of times people like to come for the fun pride events or like the festivals that I'm seeing mentioned in the chat or our festival, Queen of Atlanta or Sweet Heat Miami. But if there's an issue, especially in your area that affects LGBTQ people negatively, and you don't like it, you know that it's wrong. I think a simple saying like, "Hey, I don't support this," shows the community that, hey, outside of like when it's like the fun things to do, that this company really cares about our mission, our issues, and our concerns, and our humanity.
Great. I have
Auston,
go ahead.
I want to add something. We're seeing now we're leading the LGBTQ plus strategy for Los Cabos. Los Cabos has never worked on a specific LGBTQ plus product, and now we're starting from scratch. And I think that is important. If someone is not a member of IGLTA yet, and we're talking about trust, the first step when you start working is being part of IGLTA, learning, creating connections. Los Cabos is a destination that now is featured destination, and they're coming for the first time to the convention. I think trust is being built by proving your genuine interest. So marketing, it's a great part of it, and it will be based on when you're showing that you're an IGLTA member, you're learning, you're creating connections, you're having B2B agreements with leaders. And I do think that IGLTA is the key point on building that trust. And I think that if someone here is not yet an IGLTA member and has not registered for the convention, follow what we're doing with Los Cabos. I think that I can assure you that you will see the progress, and you can see the example of how a destination that is like really famous worldwide, such as Los Cabos, now from scratch will build that credibility that we will build over the years. But I think that here we're opening to anyone that wants to work and have ideas on how to do that, and definitely looking forward connecting with all of you at the convention in Atlanta.
Well, yeah, thanks, Oriol, for that awesome plug. I mean, you said it great. And actually, Oriol and I think actually met in Madrid at an IGLTA convention like 7 years ago. And I remember, you know, he was just starting his business and was new to tourism. And I was just, you know, I had never heard of IGLTA before. And it's awesome to have him here and say such nice things. And now he's a member of our board. So that's awesome. I heard you say one thing. We have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to try and get a few more questions in. You mentioned the word B2B, and there was one question that came in that was a little different than the rest because, you know, I think everything else had to do with strategy and kind of reaching the traveler. And this one is interesting. I don't know if, you know, who might have insight if you want to take it, but I guess the question is, you know, would there be any suggestions or is there any advice in kind of reaching the LGBT segment or working with the LGBT segment on the B2B side? So, you know, whether that's groups or conventions or meetings and things like that. I don't know if, you know, maybe Dustin or Oriol or anyone that you guys can, you know, feel free.
Yeah, one thing we're starting to work with both Salt Lake City and Sacramento on is tapping in, using the advisory group to, when there's a large convention coming in, to have them sponsor an LGBTQ event as part of the conference, or creating content that the conference can give to their members that shows, you know, all the different things they can do in the city, you know, while they're there. That's one way.
To us, now developing a lot more the MICE side of things is not only like creating a beat for bringing IGLTA to a destination, or bringing gay games, or doing like Europe Pride or World Pride. There are a lot of events in terms of MICE like that don't necessarily have to relate to only purely LGBTQ plus, but can be intersectionality again. Like for instance, there's a convention that reunites all surgeons that are experts on reassigning surgeries. So that is not LGBT plus, but shows already that you're in a destination, that you're open to this kind of thing. So look out for opportunities that are out of the box, outside Pride, outside purely LGBTQ plus events. There are groups of people. I was mentioning LGBT and golf, sports and LGBT. There's truly, we don't have to invent anything. It's out there. And when you're working in order to put out their bids, you're showing that welcoming those events, not only you're bringing revenue to your business, but again, you're showing that example. And I think that to Dustin's point, you just have to like a little bit open your mind to other opportunities that can bring you a lot of value. And definitely, MICE and LGBT is something that to me it's important and should be part of anyone's strategy.
Those are great insights on the B2B side. So we have just about 2 minutes left here. I'm going to just throw it out to either Jamie or Janey. I don't know if you want to add any last comments, and then we'll wrap it up.
I would say thank you, Austin, for this awesome opportunity for us to expose Queendom Atlanta as we heat Miami to a new audience, or some familiar faces as well. But I would say I would encourage people to definitely include women of color, especially Black women, in your campaigns. Have them on your boards, have them in your think tanks, have them a part of your planning, so that you have a more inclusive and diverse conversation, even when it comes to your LGBT plus conversations and campaigns. I think having as many people from the community, like we've stressed so much on this panel already, really helps tell the full message and the full story of the LGBTQ plus experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, you ended it perfectly. That's awesome. Jamie, did you have a last comment?
No, I mean, Janey just said it perfectly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. We hope everyone on the call, at least learned one thing, if not a few things. I just want to say thanks. Yeah, thanks to the panelists, to Jamie, to Oriol, to Dustin, and Janey. You guys have really great insights, all coming from very different backgrounds. And it's really, I think it's awesome to like have it all merge here and just hear what you all have to say, because that's how we learn from each other. So again, thank you everyone for taking the time. We weren't able to get through all the questions. There were about 40 of them. But yes, thank you. If you're not a member of IGLTA, please consider joining. And if you are or you aren't, please keep in mind September 8th through 11th in Atlanta, our first in-person event in about 18 months. We're super excited. So we hope to see you all there. So thank you, everyone. And if anyone wants to come off mute and just chat, you're welcome to in the last few minutes. Otherwise, we'll close here in the next couple minutes. Clovis, you don't have anything you want to say?
It's just to say that it was excellent. So many different information, very good. I love it. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And I think we saw, I didn't see the maximum, but we were up to 50 something. Maybe we got up to 60 participants. So very awesome.
Yeah, we have Marcelo from Brazil. Attila is here. For some people.
You have Brazil in the house representing.
Have a good day, bye, guys.
And Jim, who can speak Portuguese, so you can kind of count for it.
Austin, it was a great presentation. Lots of great content.
Thank you. Yeah, I was.
Jim. Hi, Jim.
Good to see a diverse panel as well, bringing a lot of ideas from across the world. Clovis, bom dia, boa tarde.
Bom dia. We are waiting for you in São Paulo, huh? For do some business here.
Not going to happen this year. Ciao, gente. Bye.
Ciao.
All right, everyone. Thanks so
much.
Have
a good day.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Very good, Auston. You did very well. Beautiful.
We'll speak soon.